Hi everyone, it's Maria from J'adore Le Papier. Thanks for joining me. I am back with another handbound journal. It's actually still an art journal, but more catered towards beachcombers and sea lovers. And it's a pretty big one. As you can tell, it actually has a coverlet, so this is not the cover. I've been showing on Instagram the Swiss Family Robinson vintage. It might actually be an antique book. It's pretty beat up. The pages are brittle. They don't even stay together if you touch them. So I made a coverlet because the spine is exposed. The journal from a few weeks ago, the art journal with the open spine, I'm showing the French link stitching I did with the fabric tape in between the stitches. That was a really popular one, and so others have asked if I'd be making more of those. So I did the same style this time, and that's why I made the coverlet, just because it's such a big book. So the coverlet does come off pretty easily. Only one side, just like the old days when we had book covers at school for our school books, only one side slips into this pocket. And then the back side is just tucked in. I was originally gonna add a button, but even though I didn't do an alligator mouth this time, in fact, the spine itself was 3 inches because every single page received a piece of fabric in between each leaf just to give it that thickness, so that in the end, when you fill it with your artwork and your ephemera, it actually doesn't become too alligator. So the book size is bigger than the last two I've made for art. This book is about 6 1/4, just under, but with the pages I'd say 6 1/2, and it is, let's see, almost 10 inches tall. The spine, even before I started to fill it with artwork and ephemera, is just about 3 inches exactly. The covers, I did seal the edges just because they really were coming apart, so I used not Mod Podge, but the what was it? So I did seal the corners, but I did not seal the top, so I left it as is, but it is clean. And then the spine I saved, but it'll be in the book so that you could use it your way. And then these fabrics are French burlap, and I had to cobble it together because I only had remnants. And then this is actually a piece of driftwood here from Washington State that I just simply screwed onto a solid spine that matches the width of the book spine. And I used wire after drilling some holes. It can come off, so if you want it off of there, but I thought it would look pretty cool on a bookshelf one day once it's full of art, and people will naturally gravitate and ask, what's that? And then the pocket in front, you could add your book title or your book cards, some artwork that you're currently working on. So this is a tin that I received, or I bought from Mia. She's on Etsy. She's in the south of France, Marseille, but the product itself was a tobacco made in London. So I filled it with porcelain from the GNC, actually from Greece. 2 little bits, a bigger piece. That's actually gorgeous. I wouldn't mind painting or sketching that before it goes to whoever owns it. And then a little bit. And then these top ones up here, these 4, are sea glass from the GNC. Green, and then this looks like it was probably a bottle top, or maybe the base of a bottle. So it's still pretty, it's not as smooth yet. It's probably a younger piece, or maybe it just hasn't reached over 100 years old yet. And then based on the size, it might have been a perfume bottle stopper. And then this shell probably is from Florida. I found it at an antique shop here in Camas, Washington. And then this clamshell is actually from Polsbo, Washington, at my uncle's old property when I was out there trying to help them sell. I've lined each of your origami boxes with antique French ledger just to give it that nice aged look. And then there is a charm here that you can hang off of your spine, the wire that I used to attach the driftwood. Let's see. Oh, and this here is a stone. It's called green aventurine. This is from the south of Florida, and I believe supposed to give you good energy and healing. I'll double check that. So this is an optional piece with the journal. I know we're all trying to be budget conscious lately, especially me, but this is my favorite piece. So this is one of my origami boxes, just using your shopping bags. And then I did line it with some more of the French 1800s ledger. And I made it a plastic using our transparency film cut out just so that it could appear like it was floating. And it is freestanding, so on a solid, it might actually be on your bookshelf, and that would look pretty cool. And the best part about it is, bottle opens, and each one of these shells, even though a couple of them are stuck right now, there we go, you could actually sketch each one and add it to your Beachcomber art journal. So how sweet are these? So again, this piece will come with the journal. It's not part of the blue tin, which is optional here since those come from Greece. It took me a little longer to collect those. If you're taking that class with Jane Chip, where she's putting together collections in individual boxes, so that might be fun. Okay, so over 128 pages have been bound in. So you saw on Instagram where I sew in each leaf, which is a folded sheet, and sew it together. This time I did decide to go ahead and include some mull, which is typical of what I do. Usually I'll do a solid piece of mull in between just to give the book structure so that as you're opening it, it does remain flat, and also just to strengthen it, especially if you're not going to use the coverlet. So, and I ran out of mull, or I can't find it in my storage, so I used one of these antique French fabrics, which are pretty thin, and it worked perfectly. So I love how it actually looks. Nod to the title, Swiss Family Robinson, their little Swiss flag right here. Even though it's not meant to be a themed book for the storyline itself, it is meant to inspire everything that they handmade or made using remnants from their shipwreck and or the beach and the island that they were stuck on. This is a little French fabric from Aline, mulberry paper with the pastels that I was using, so I made a little bit of seawater and sand using the same thing, and then the shell is just a pressed flower from my mom's gardens. And then I love antique French documents, so they're throughout. This thing actually probably has more than 10 to 15 1800s, if not even later, older 1700s documents, authentic. So these aren't digitals, they're not scans. They're the real deal. And in fact, this first one is 4 pages. And the best part about it is it has blue ribbon to keep the pages together. So I thought that would be too perfect to go in here. Some of that antique 200-year-old fabric, the French fabric that I have. First page, so just to warn you, I did add my own art here, but this is acrylic on raw canvas, just like I made last time the art journals. I do gesso, but I use a clear gesso. I don't like the white gesso background for some reason. And then, of course, some more of these amazing French documents. This is separate from the actual document itself. These come from MEUB, so these are the 1700s and 1800s documents. And then I just have it pinned on there with another piece of the document here. I'll use every single piece of these antique documents. And right behind it is the square footage or the layout of whatever this property was when it was purchased. This is an authentic photograph, so everything that's not backed by black drawing paper is original. So this is from the 1950s, 1959, and the same family that has the niece or the daughter Nancy, and Island Lake. I'll have northern. I'm gonna have to find out where that is. Anyway, and I did do some artwork of the local fish that we like to fish here in the Northwest. A lot of coho salmon, steelhead, and Chinook salmon. This is a combination of pastel and watercolor. And then I finished it off with more watercolor just to keep the pastel from smudging too much. It's on watercolor paper, and I will be giving you a large sheet of Arch's watercolor paper to add your own artwork here. You're going to see some fishing line on here. I figured you might be able to use that for some of your jewelry, or if you make any hanging ornaments for the beach, or hang any shells that you might find at the beach to make your garland. So there's a lot of fishing line in here. Here are the original Swiss Family Robinson book pages. Very, very brittle, very, very old, but I love the images, so I've selected a few images for you that you might be able to salvage and stack behind your artwork. Gone fishing, continuing the theme. Here are the lures that I painted with Sumi ink on wax, or not wax paper, but parchment paper a few weeks ago. More antique French documents and vintage calendar documents, just because I love the buttery feel of this. So, and this was something that I wanted to make. It's something I found on Pinterest where they carved the shell itself and used it as a stamp or a press. This book spine here is a piece of the original book itself, so I just paper clipped it here in case you want to use that. But if you could figure out how to carve, or if you make your own stamps, that would be awesome to make. And then another one of these French antique documents. This is a 2-pager, seafoam green to it, so it's quite beautiful. And this will come with it too. It's an old vintage bike license plate, but I thought the seafoam green was too perfect. You'll see a lot of multimedia, watercolor, and or drawing paper in here, just like my last 2 art journals. And then the grids that I love to include. These are watercolor and or ink, the Ferris wheel press inks that I like getting a few years ago. They work great as watercolors. And then I framed them with fabrics and or string. You're going to see a lot of string here. Here's Sagita's Eco Dye. I thought it was too perfect with the blues and purples, and I might have added some additional blue ink in there or spilled. And then the grids that I can't stop making anymore. The tidbits of the papers and book pages that I use making this book, I did create a little bit of a weave, basket weave for you, because they make beautiful backdrops. So if you have some artwork, how awesome would that be? Whether it's your photograph or abstract art. And you're going to get more bits, more of these cutoffs, so that you can make your own weave, and you're also going to get embroidery thread so you can stitch on some of your artwork. So this thing is full of little bits and scraps. This is handmade paper with more of the bits that you just saw in the envelope, but I thought I would put it on here just to mimic the awesome surfboard. So these are all from a vintage National Geographic magazine booklet that I have, that I'll be making into another beach journal for myself when I'm all caught up with life. More of my artwork in here just to give you inspiration. These, I showed you the salmon from the West Coast. These come from the Atlantic, the East Coast fishing. So I guess you guys have a lot of, or East Coast has a lot of blue sea bass. And they look fat and pretty fierce. A lot of scales and a lot of really spiky fins on them. Here's the fishing line that I told you I'd be adding. So these could actually hang as little ornaments or things in your, around your office. This is an original. There's Nancy. You saw her original photograph in 2 journals ago, and she must have gone fishing with her parents. Nancy, I'll miss you. Anyway, so there's that one, and here's another version. These were blue ink, the Ferris wheel press blue, primarily blue ink, and then I also used some silver watercolor, and then of course a little bit of black ink, Sumi ink. More surf and Hawaii pictures from the National Geographic. Don't ever be afraid of white pages, art pages, just like I did here. You could just put a little smudge of paint or layer some of the antique papers that you're going to be seeing throughout. Watercolor paper, this is nice and thick. Pages, every single one will have a lining of that antique French fabric, the 200-plus-year-old. So that's what's going to give the bulk of the 3 inches to your spine, allowing you to expand the actual artwork that you add there. But this image, this is one of Sagita's eco prints that I purchased, that I'm making all of the art journals from with. And I thought this piece of a leaf reminded me of the giant turtle in the movie, The Swiss Family Robinson. So you'll have to look that up if you haven't seen it in a while. And then some handmade paper. More raw canvas. I love mussels. I eat them all the time, especially mussel stew. So again, this is replaceable, or just flip it over and re-gesso the other side and do your own artwork. This is a piece or a page of a Dutch magazine or newspaper, and it has this amazing ship. I'm not going to take it out because it's fragile, but amazing ship on the front, and then photos of birds. So I thought you could do some sketching of birds in here as well. As you see, more of the drywall tape there, and then this awesome buttery, I guess it's called carbon paper, with all this French writing from the 1800s. This is beautiful. And this comes by way of Linda. They have these awesome numbers. So you're going to see a lot of this because it looks great layered behind your artwork. You could just do a little bit more fabric to finish up your collage. I will include this blue wool thread so that you could stitch across the art if you should keep any of it. I'm a sailing fan. I haven't sailed myself since college, maybe, or just after, in my 20s. I had a friend who lived on his sailboat, so it was our job to help him sail if we wanted to go places, and to remove the barnacles from the bottom of the boat every year and repaint the bottom. I hope he still lives on a boat. Artwork that I found on Pinterest, and I decided to try, and I'm still practicing on raw canvas. I didn't put enough gesso, so you see some of the acrylic seeping through, but this is the Nautilus on acrylic, or Nautilus with acrylic paints, and on raw canvas. This antique Italian cotton rag book pages in your extra book pages packet. I made you one of these envelopes that I, just like the seed packets I have in my digital kit, and I gave it a clear backing, so you'll have extra cotton rag pages, extra diary pages in case you want to do some writing, and the lined pages are all gone. Some embossed wallpaper that reminds me of sand dollars. I love drawing and sketching sand dollars. So book plates or pages, drawings from the original Swiss Family Robinson book. First day covers with actual stamps inside from Canada. So that's in there. And I just used some drywall tape to tip that in. And then, awesome, 1854 French document. Looks like some accounting, somebody's receipt maybe for a purchase. Look at that writing. I mean, if you had a piece of artwork sitting on here, look how amazing your collection will look. Look at this aging. Look at that foxing. Look at just antique receipt. No, it looks like there were plans on it, so it must have come from the documents from Norway just recently. Grid so you can plot anything you're collecting. This is actually just watercolor on parchment paper. There's a cliff out here by Ruby Beach in the Olympic National Forest out here in Washington, and this reminded me of a cliffside. It was originally black blobs that spilled on my parchment, and I made it into the cliffside. So mistakes are artwork too. And then this is an abstract of clamshell. I love digging for mussels mostly, and clams every now and then. And this one just happens to have a little pearl. Well, it's actually a real shell piece that's starting to turn into its mother of pearl. So there's your little clam made out of fabric, and then the string makes up the shell, and then the waxed pastel paper that I had made. And then some of the markings of antique pottery. I like using these pages. They're nice and thick, and of course they take paint really well without seeping through. So that's a little bit of acrylic paint, and it did not bleed through the other side. Don't be afraid of the white art pages. These are the Strathmore drawing pages that I add here. First of all, they're already artwork with this fabric, but take your garbage bags and create the grids that I love making to sketch some of the things you find. It's sitting on top of this waxed pastel paper that I made, and then a little bit of that antique document that was out front that I don't I mean, it's cotton rag basically, and you could cut it up into squares before sketching whatever it is that you've collected from the beach. Istanbul. So I was there, let's see, that was one of my last trips in 2019. Found this photograph on Pinterest, so this means a lot to me because that view, and I did rent a house originally and then I stayed in a hotel for a while, and I just backed it with one of these antique documents from Norway. 1820 French document. This I think is from Mia. Look at that handwriting. I should be scanning these, really. I mean, how incredible are these documents? Original. These are not scans, FYI. So if you're gonna find out, this book has over 20 original documents. I'm crazy, yes, but I love originals. You can't replace them, even though I love my digitals. This is abstract. This is my Istanbul. It's the same scene. Happened mostly on accident because I didn't like what was on the grid that I had painted. And suddenly I saw that the markings in the back look like the temple, the Grand Bazaar basically in the background, plus the temples around it, and then the fabrics out for, that she's hanging to dry, which they still do there. So that's my abstract for the day. Well, maybe there might be others, but... And look at the layering here. You're going to see all these antique documents. I don't know why I can't not include them, but I've gone kind of overboard today in this journal. Original ephemera. Kites. There's Lincoln City here in Oregon, and they do an annual kite festival every year, and actually it's not just once a year. They have a kite festival a lot because it's so windy there. So this is one of my canvas with some acrylic on it, where I tore it off one of the pieces that I included here, and I folded it up and it looked like a kite. And of course some of the fabric strings. So more lures that I had printed with my calligraphy pen. Just reminded me of the lure. Or actually that reminds me of the paddle, which is on the coverlet for this book. It looks like a spoon, a wooden spoon, but it was just driftwood like these guys. I tried using these as your border, the spine border, but they were just too long for the book itself, as you can see. But it's just fun collecting driftwood. We have so much here in Washington. Original spine of the book, but the spine is strong. I put the mull, all that stitching. It does have the book glue under the mull so that it's strong. That's why it's holding together here, and you can see it's keeping its shape. So if it had a spine, I'd be saying, look at that hollow, bendable spine. So you can add this or make it into a bookmark. And then here's one of the other carbon copies of the documents, antique documents that I received from Nancy. Adding some little bits whenever they remind me of shapes. Pinterest. I love how he's working with the nets. This is one of my original pieces. It's actually a light acrylic first sketch. I went in fast. I did not make any changes. It's supposed to be a lighthouse. Luckily I had enough paint to really create the lighthouse and then the foggy light effects, and then I did not go back and retouch. I just added a little bit of sand using my Ferris wheel press acrylic or ink, dip pen ink, but this main lighthouse is acrylic on the raw canvas. Anything backed with the black drawing paper, Canson drawing paper, is from Pinterest. Netting, so I made you a netting card. Get it? Netting, not knitting card. You could use that as a birthday card or a thank you, or you could leave it as a backdrop, and then some rice paper, calligraphy rice paper. So you can write on this with Sumi ink in your calligraphy brush if you're a calligraphy artist. I love parts of boats and rusted browns. If I could have a rusty brown book, I would just have all brown images. Mykonos. Fisherman trying to untangle his fishing nets. Black paper, so that's from Pinterest. So I gave you some of the treated string that came from this canvas from your cover. So anytime I'd tear a piece, these really thick ropes would come off, and then I treated them with either glue or ink just to stiffen them up a little bit. But I love how, just like that, with a little bit of antique writing and mulberry paper. More fishermen, Mykonos. So I've been there, and a lot of the Aegean sea glass. This is actually ink, sumi ink dipped. So you're going to see some abstract artwork in a little bit, but I needed some black string, other than not the embroidery, but actual string. So I dipped it in a bowl of sumi ink and had ink everywhere. But I just love that look. Authentic. You could use your bike license as a paperweight. Authentic postcard. So as you can see, all these pages are starting to layer and stick out a little bit, which is my favorite part of these journals. And again, just like all my books that I make, feel free to squish the spine a little bit to give it flexibility. And then this is the abstract art where I had to dye the string black to frame the nautilus, because I love nautilus shells. Sketching them, making paper art, book page from within this journal, some of the waxed mulberry paper that I did in two other journals already. I made some green and sea blues, so that's a little bit of those. And then mostly the black inked string is what gives it that framing. So this string, same string here that I just black ink dipped. Short page, so you could have your birds that you sketch. This is actually a thick watercolor paper. This might be the arch. No. What is this one? Bao Hong, I think. I'm practicing my birds. Not getting there yet. Look how angry. And of course I love my koi fish. So, and this one has a little bit of dyed fabric on the end to create his tail. More antique. Look at this antique document. It is so thick. I mean, really, this thing will probably outlast all of us, because it is so amazing. That thick quality paper. Some of my shadows of the koi that I was practicing a couple weeks ago. Okay, fun fact about this page. If you look closely, and I might have to turn it, there is a sardine fish. This is one of Sagita's coffee and rust stained papers. I don't know, but that looks like a sardine to me. And that's all I ate in Greece. A lot of fresh, and Italy actually, fresh caught that day. So I couldn't cover him up, and then I added a piece of the koi practice fish. There's another koi on the back that I didn't like, but it's a rusty orange. So how amazing. Out of nothing comes images. Look at this document. Okay, it's one of these folded letters. I don't want to take it out just because, one, they're fragile, but look at the plots. They actually outline the plot for this document. And then the blue pencil, but there's nothing like originals and the original cotton rag papers. Another tipped in first day stamps from Canada. I just like the green and browns against the blue. Natural patina of this old document. Look at that. All you need is an authentic postcard of you on the beach and some major water stains and patina on these antique French documents. Pinterest, sailing. I love sails. And this is my abstract sketch, Sumi ink sketch of a catamaran in a race. It's actually, you know, keeled over. And then I added a little bit of white paper for one of the sails, and then a little bit of the wax paper just to create a silhouette there. It's not really a silhouette, it's more like a blob. But that's what they look like when they're racing, blobs. And then more. I haven't counted, but another antique French document. Yep. Let's see. Okay, this is abstract ink art using the string, the dip string that you saw around the Nautilus and you saw in one of the Mykonos images. And to me, at the end, they look like San Juan Islands, or maybe islands down in around Australia, and the coral reefs, and how amazing would that be to be a route. So I created it as a sailing route. So this is a map of a sailing race. So there's your start of a race flag. It's supposed to be a blue with a white center square. They cut through the islands and the ragged coral reefs. There he is again. There's his little sailing number. I'm supposed to be on there. Cutting through the reefs. So anytime you see jagged, they're having to crisscross through rocks and more coral reef. And along the east side of the islands, and around and back to the finish. And there's the finish flag, solid blue square flag. So I call this the boat race. And I love it because it's on this document that included measures and location of the plot of land. It did have a rip down the center, so I just backed it because this is very fine onion skin paper that they place these little bits of paper on to create the boundaries. And then I put a piece of that antique French fabric on the back just to seal up that crack right there. This Nautilus that I found on Pinterest, it says it was AI generated, so, but it didn't say who. And you could sketch on the back. And then handmade paper that I love including. One single large sheet of the waxed mulberry paper with the pastel color, kind of creating a sea blue green, murky sea blue. Mykonos, so this is my abstract paper art of Mykonos, the white houses that are here in this photograph. I went a few years ago with my brother, my mom, and my aunt. We island hopped starting from Crete all the way up back to Athens. The good old days when I could travel. And then brown, some of the brown canvas fabric that was on your coverlet. And then some of the Suminagashi ink art that I had made a few weeks ago. This one just looked like a giant crashing wave. And then, of course, an antique document, French document. Looks like some receipt. canvas. I did treat it with clear gesso, and I used ink. This was supposed to be a shoreline of Ruby Beach in the National Olympic Park here in Washington State, because they have haystacks, they have all these logs, and then all these sandy beaches around here. I was gonna finish it, but then I thought, oh, but wait, I don't own this, so I'll let whoever the owner is either cover that up with a fresh canvas or continue the scene. So it's basically oceanside wrapping around and logs everywhere, and of course greenery. Anyway, so I'll contribute that as my abstract beginning of artwork, and then your bike license, and that is the end. So there you go. 3-inch spine, not quite alligator mouth, so it's ready for you. It has a lot of the materials already in there, so you could just keep layering your artwork. And there are all the amazing antique pages, antique documents sticking out. You'll get your extra book pages. This little origami sheet that I made also has some tidbits from the scraps in here, but some handmade paper and documenting your shells, because this will come with a journal. I will go ahead and list this, or just reach out to me on Instagram. Otherwise, if no one reaches out, I will be listing it in my coffee shop, ko-fi.com, and I'll link that below. So thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'm going to get quicker and quicker and start to get caught up with everything here. And I will see you next time. Thank you.